Hello everyone, this is King Gratz here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. And today I'm making my first NBA video. This one is going to be predictions for this year's 2025 playoff bracket. Officially, the regular season came to an end today for the NBA, and we now know officially all of the playoff matchups from the play-in tournament all the way through to the first round. So I'm going to try and predict every round, starting from the play-in all the way to the NBA Finals, and let you guys know what I think is going to happen this year. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content if you like this one, and let's get into it. So starting with the play-in tournament, I'm going to go in the Western Conference first. The 9-10 game, we have the Sacramento Kings versus the Dallas Mavericks. The winner of this game would then play the loser of the 7-8 game, which would be the Golden State Warriors or the Memphis Grizzlies. So starting between the Kings and Mavericks, honestly, I have to go with the Kings here. I just think that Sacramento, even though they're not necessarily a super strong team, they do have some solid players like Domantas Sabonis. They picked up Zach LaVine. They did move on from De'Aaron Fox, but they did at least have a pretty solid supporting cast, and they most likely should survive the Mavericks, who have been really just kind of in disarray ever since they traded away Luka Doncic. I am still baffled by that. But yeah, I'm going to say the Kings probably win this one. And then between the Warriors and Grizzlies, this one's kind of a toss-up for me. I like how the Warriors look. Ever since they got Jimmy Butler, they've been just a completely different team. Steph Curry's been fantastic for them. Draymond Green looks rejuvenated. And I just think this team is just gelling a lot better as a whole. For the Grizzlies, they did fire their head coach not too long ago, and that was a very questionable decision, at least for some people. And but they still have a really good team. You know, you got Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. They still have also some young guys like Zach Edey who have been improving, Scottie Pippen Jr. for example. So they do have a pretty good squad. I'm just gonna say, based on veteran experience, I'm gonna go with the Warriors. I just think Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, these guys are all like proven veterans who have won championships before, and I think this is pretty like, you know, easy for them to kind of work through. So yeah, I'm going to say the Warriors make it, and they'll be the 7th seed, and they will play the Houston Rockets in the first round. The Grizzlies would then play the Kings in the final game of the play-in for the West, and honestly, I'd have to go with the Grizzlies. I think that the Grizzlies are just so much of a deeper roster, and also they're probably not as inconsistent as the Kings are. Yeah, they've had some pretty solid scorers this year, but the team's been really kind of up and down, and they ultimately finished below 500, and I don't really have much faith in them in this playoff. So yeah, Grizzlies, I say they finish as the number 8 seed for the West, and they will play the Thunder. So now going for the Eastern Conference now, the 9-10 game, we got the Bulls versus the Heat, and then in the 7-8 game, we've got the Magic facing the Hawks. Starting with the 9-10 game, I'm going to say that the Miami Heat prevail over the Bulls. I think even though Chicago has a decent amount of depth, considering when they moved on from Zach LaVine and getting guys like Kevin Huerter and co to come in to help support Vucevic, and they do have some young guys in there like, you know, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Ayo Dosunmu, but honestly, I don't really see them as being strong enough, and I just still see them just stuck in mediocrity. For the Heat, moving on from Jimmy Butler was definitely a dramatic episode, but getting guys like Andrew Wiggins and co to work together, I think that they probably have enough shooting to probably outlast the Bulls here. And I think that's probably the only reason why they're going to win this game, honestly. Between the Magic and Hawks, I'm going to have the Orlando Magic moving on. The Magic have been red hot as of late. I think going into today, they were on like a 5-game winning streak or whatnot, whereas the Hawks have been kind of mediocre. So I'm just going to say that even though the Hawks probably have more talent, the Magic are a young team. They have some playoff experience from last season, and I think that they probably would just move on here. They did finish at 500, and I just think that being the hot hand right now, I think they're probably a safer bet at the moment. And then therefore for the final matchup for the East play-in, you've got the Heat versus the Hawks, and I'm gonna have to go with Atlanta. It's kind of straightforward. The Hawks have just a lot more talent and whatnot, and I think that they probably would survive the Heat's antics. Trae Young would probably have a great game being a playmaker. Guys like Dyson Daniels would probably flourish, and that's just my expectation. So as a result, the Hawks would play the Cavaliers in the first round, and the Magic would play the Celtics in the first round of the Eastern Conference. Moving on to the first round here. So I'm going to once again go from the West all the way down, and then from the East all the way down. So the Thunder, they would be playing the 8th seed, which would be the Grizzlies here. Honestly, it has to be OKC. It would be a shock if the Thunder lost this series. They've just had such an incredible year for them, and I'm pretty sure everybody would say no matter who they play as the 8th seed, they most likely are going to win it. So I'm going to keep it very straightforward. Next, the Nuggets and Clippers. This is an interesting one because ultimately this is a matchup that's got a lot of like internal things you got to worry about. The Nuggets literally just fired like Mike Malone only a couple days ago, and that was really surprising. I don't know. I've heard things that like he had a bit of a culture problem. It was kind of toxic in the room, and I think Jokic said something about it as well. And I didn't read up on that report, but you know, you've got that thing. And at the same time, the Nuggets aren't necessarily too deep of a team. They have a bunch of young guys, but they weren't entirely being utilized, and also they were dealing with a bunch of injury issues. And then you got the Clippers, who kind of got healthy, but when you know they were kind of let's just say they took advantage of a bit of a mid Western Conference initially, and you know guys like James Harden, for example, or Norman Powell, they all kind of went off, and that's what really kind of kept them afloat, and they've been pretty good this year. So it's kind of a tough matchup. I'm just going to say based on experience and for guys who can kind of take over a game, I have to probably go with the Nuggets. Jokic most likely will dominate everything in this series, and if guys like Jamal Murray, Christian Braun, and Aaron Gordon really step up and have a major breakout again in the first round, then I think it's kind of done for the Clippers. So yeah, I'm going to say Nuggets win this series. Next, we got the Lakers and the Timberwolves. This one's kind of interesting because, of course, the Lakers, just ever since they picked up Doncic from the Mavericks, they have just been a completely different team. LeBron looks heavily rejuvenated. Luka's been fantastic in a Lakers uniform. Their depth is still relatively the same and kind of limited. They also don't really have an effective center technically because you know they couldn't trade for Mark Williams at the trade deadline because it got nixed. But either way, the Lakers are a team that you cannot mess with here. For the Timberwolves, it was weird for them to start. They were kind of mid. Things didn't really look good with Julius Randle, and Dante DiVincenzo didn't really look like a strong fit with the roster. Guys like Rudy Gobert also didn't look good. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to say about a month ago, things started looking better for them, and actually everything was gelling together. And they were also getting good contributions from other guys like Jalen McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and it's kind of tough. You know, I would like to pick the Timberwolves for a big upset here, but I just think for the long-term scheme of things, I probably say that it's going to be the Lakers. You know, I'm just going to go with the old-fashioned, like, oh, LeBron's probably going to win them a game or two, or Luka is probably going to dominate, and that's kind of where I'm going to go with. I'm going to chicken out, and I'm just going to say the Lakers win this one. And then last for the West first round, we've got the Rockets facing the 7th-seeded Warriors. This one's a really interesting series because the Rockets have really grown into this identity that they've created. They've gotten big breakout contributions from guys like Jalen Green and Amen Thompson. Şengün's been very good for them at center. Van Vliet's still at point guard, very good there. The Warriors probably would have a bit of an advantage coming into it, considering that they just beat the Grizzlies in that 7-8 game at the play-in. And also they've got obviously more championship experience with Curry, Butler, and Draymond Green, for example. But I'm going to probably stick with Houston. I just think Houston's a much deeper team. It's a team that I probably would trust more. And, you know, maybe the Warriors would probably surprise them in the early going of the series, but I think in the long run, the Rockets probably outlast them. So now for the Eastern Conference, starting with the Cavs facing off against the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks. In this case, I'm going to probably say that Atlanta is most likely going to be pretty tired out after the play-in tournament. The Cavs have been a very well-rounded team this year. They've been relatively consistent and haven't faced much of a challenge, honestly. I think some people will probably still question whether or not if they're really going to be built for the playoffs and if things are going to fall apart without the lack of adversity, as I was trying to say. But I'm going to stick with the Cavs here. I'm going to say that they probably win this first round series. I won't think it's going to be like a very clean like sweep or whatnot, but I'm going to say the Hawks probably get in a game or two, and that's going to be pretty much it. For the Pacers and Bucks, this one's also one that I think could be maybe debatable. The Bucks did not look good early on, but then things kind of turned around for them. They got out of Chris Middleton's contract, and it allowed them to add in a little bit more depth players. Guys like Kyle Kuzma have been playing good. Giannis continues to play at a solid level. Damian Lillard kind of took a step back, but he's still serviceable. For the Pacers, definitely a bit of a underwhelming year compared to what they did last season. They didn't have the same sort of like style and pace and effectiveness on offense, but they did kind of tighten up defensively. They got bigger contributions from guys like Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin and whatnots. Halliburton was kind of inconsistent after the All-Star break, I think, but he got better as time went on, so this is still a pretty solid team. I do think this is probably one of those series that may just go to 7 games, just because I think that these guys are kind of, I want to say sort of equally matched. I mean, the Pacers obviously have more depth if it gets to that, but at the end of the day, this might be one series that goes the distance. But I will say the Pacers will win this series. Next, what should be a fun one, the Knicks and the Pistons. First of all, I have not seen the Pistons in the playoffs in like forever. This is their first playoff appearance, I think, in like 5 or 6 years now. I think it was like, what, 2019? And after all those years of being a bottom-dwelling team in the East, they finally have a playoff appearance, and they got more wins this year than they had in like the 5 seasons in the past, so that's pretty good for them. For the Knicks, it was expected that they finish as a top 3 team in the East. They got a very good roster, very deep, well-rounded. Things have been looking pretty solid for them. Even though it would be a really cool thing if the Pistons upset the Knicks here, and I mean, out of all the teams that very well could be prone to an upset, I would probably say the Knicks, but I'm going to say that the Pistons are probably one and done, so I'm going to say the Knicks win this series. And then last but not least, we got the Celtics facing off against the 7th-seeded Orlando Magic. Honestly, the Celtics are just such a superior team over the Magic, it's not even funny. Yes, Orlando's a young team and they're getting better, but the Celtics should easily win this series. So yeah, Boston easily over Orlando. So now in the second round, this is what the matchups I believe are going to look like. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is what it's going to be. So we've got the Thunder facing the Nuggets, the Lakers facing the Rockets in the Western Conference, and in the East we have the Cavaliers facing the Pacers and the Knicks facing the Celtics. So starting off in the West, second round, so Thunder versus Nuggets. This one I think is going to come down to, I guess, how much time do each of these teams have rest. If the Thunder breeze through that number 8 seed, then I'm going to assume that they probably are going to be a lot more effective coming into the second round. If the Nuggets really have to battle tooth and nail against the Clippers, then that's going to be a significant challenge for them if they get to round 2. I do think depth-wise, the Thunder certainly are going to beat the Nuggets on that front, and that probably is what wins them in the series. I think the real question is that who's going to be better in clutch time. I really do think that this series is going to have a bunch of games that probably go wire to wire at the very end of the fourth, and I want to say the Nuggets have a better clutch time, but I'm going to probably just stick with the Thunder here. I just think that probably SGA will try to take over a game for himself, and that's probably how the Thunder most likely are going to win this series if it happens. For the Lakers and Rockets now, this is a series that I think could also be going wire to wire. If Luka and LeBron stay healthy, and if they're getting meaningful contributions by the guys that they have in their depth, then the Lakers will certainly keep this series close with the Rockets. Houston would be on a big high here if they make it this far, and you know, I want to have a lot of more faith in them. I really do think that guys like Şengün or Jalen Green or Amen Thompson, for example, could really take over some games and maybe run away with it for some time, but I'm going to say that probably the old dogs prevail, or Doncic becomes an addition for his reputation for what he did last year with Dallas, and I'm going to say the Lakers win this series. In the East, Cavs versus Pacers. This one's also a tight one. I'm kind of unsure. It depends, because like I said, the Pacers-Bucks series is a toss-up for me. The Cavs very well should breeze through the first round, so I really think that with that added rest, they're probably not going to have much of a problem in this series, and I think the Pacers might get tired out or they might suffer from some injuries. I don't know. It depends on how tough that Bucks series is if they get through it. But yeah, I'm going to say the Cavs win this without too many problems. And then Knicks Celtics, this would be a really big series to win. The Knicks, you got guys like Brunson and Josh Hart, for example, who could very well be major difference makers for them. But the Celtics, you've got proven veterans and champions like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, who have been very good. They've also got a very nice bench with guys like Peyton Pritchard, who have been playing pretty well and perhaps have shown that they could be useful coming into the postseason. So I really do think that these guys are going to do a lot of damage again this year like they did last year. Honestly, I think the Celtics are more proven than the Knicks and are probably going to have a better chance of getting through. If I had to throw money on this, I would probably say the Celtics. All right, now for the conference finals in the West, Thunder versus Lakers. I would like to see the Thunder go to the NBA Finals, I'm not going to lie. But I think for the NBA, they're probably going to try and rig this or something. And I'm going to say they're probably just going to go with the Lakers. Let's be honest. LeBron and Luka in the finals for the Lakers. Let's be honest. It's going to get some views, right? And then Cavs and Celtics. This would also be a big series for the Cavaliers. You've got, so much dominance in the regular season, going to the playoffs, and you make it to the ECF. That's a big accomplishment for them. So that would be really big. For the Celtics, I don't know if they would start to suffer from maybe some like burnout or whatnot, because they've been already playing for so much over the last year or so, winning the championship last year. But I really do think that the Celtics probably shine in this series. I think with their previous championship experience that they're most likely going to take advantage of the Cavaliers' shortcomings, and I think they're going to come up clutch in some games. So that means the NBA Finals is going to be the classic matchup of the Boston Celtics versus the LA Lakers. Who would have thought, right? I got to be honest though, I kind of had this series in my head since like Luka got traded to LA. It's just kind of my thought, right? I always thought that the Celtics are certainly the best team in the East when it comes to playoff time. And the Lakers have been just a completely different animal ever since they got Luka. So that's why I really think about it that way. And then for how this series ends, honestly, I think that the Celtics are NBA champions, man. I really do think they can repeat. They've just got such a solid roster. They've got proven scoring. They've got strong veterans, championship experience last year. And, they breathed through the regular season. They were really solid throughout. And I just think at the end of the day, the magic that Luka and LeBron can have for the Lakers is probably going to run out if they make it to the finals. And the Celtics will certainly beat them with their depth and clutch scoring. So I think that's what's going to happen. I have the Celtics as my 2025 NBA champions. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment saying who you think is going to win the NBA Finals this year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.